punish my child in front of the school principal, but inside I was proud of what he did. I have a son, Kuba, 14 years old. He had just started his first year of middle school. Generally, a good kid. He doesn't cause big problems, doesn't wander the streets at night, doesn't fight during breaks, doesn't guzzle energy drinks like half of his classmates. But he has one flaw, or maybe it's a virtue, depends on how you look at it. Kuba always has to have the last word. If he says A, you can bet he'll follow it up with B, C, D, and the rest of the alphabet. Doesn't matter if he's talking to a buddy, a teacher, or his own mother. If he believes he's right, he won't back down. Sometimes it drives me crazy. Sometimes, honestly, I admire him for having that kind of courage. To give you an example, once I was called into school because Kuba almost got into a fight with another boy. The reason? A debate about cars. One claimed the BMW M3 was faster. The other insisted on the Audi RS4. Of course, my son wouldn't let it go. Apparently, the arguments got so heated that the only thing missing was a wrench to turn the classroom into a garage brawl. Luckily, the teachers broke it up before it got physical, but that was child's play compared to what happened a few weeks later. It was an ordinary day. I was just leaving work when the phone rang. On the screen, the school's number. I picked up, and it was the principal himself. "You must come to the school immediately." And then he hung up. No explanation, no hello, no don't worry, nothing. And when the principal calls you personally and then cuts the line, you know it's serious. My palms were sweaty, my heart pounding like a hammer. A million scenarios raced through my mind. A fight, drugs, arson. I dropped everything and drove straight there. When I walked into the principal's office, the atmosphere was thick as smoke. The principal sat there, red-faced. Next to him, Kuba's geography teacher, Mr. Zbigniew. And then there was my son, calm as if he'd just come out of meditation. "What happened?" I asked. The principal folded his hands and said, "Your son got into a serious argument with a teacher." I glanced at Kuba. He looked calm, almost proud, staring right into my eyes. "What was it about?" I pressed. And that's when I learned something that sounded like a bad joke. It turned out that Mr. Zbigniew, our geography teacher, had recently changed his worldview. He had become a flat earther. Yes, flat earth. And he started preaching it in class, talking about NASA conspiracies, fake space photos, and how the horizon always looks straight. Kuba, who has devoured books about space since he was little and dreams of working for SpaceX, couldn't hold back. He stood up and said out loud, "That's nonsense." And that's how it began. They argued for a full 10 minutes. Mr. Zbigniew threw around lines like, "If the earth were a ball, people in the south would fall off." Kuba shot back, "Gravity, sir. Basic knowledge. Teacher, I don't believe in something you can't see." Kuba, "So maybe you don't believe in bacteria either because you can't see them with your own eyes." The kids in the class were having a free comedy show. The principal, not so much. And then came the line. The one that landed me in that suffocating office, trying not to laugh. My son, calm as ever, looked at his teacher and said, "You're stupid, old man. They should have put you in a coffin already if you believe that crap." Silence. No one knew what to say. When the principal finished his tirade about lack of respect for authority, behavior unworthy of a student, and the need to restore order in class, I nearly burst out laughing. Authority? A man who, in 2023, believes the earth is a pancake? But I kept my mouth shut. I knew that if I spoke something like, "Authority is when my plumber fixes the sink, not when a teacher parrots YouTube conspiracies," would slip out. Being a mom often means being an actress at Oscar level. So I put on a serious face and said, "I am very sorry for my son's behavior. This absolutely should not have happened. I'll talk to him and he will be punished." The principal calmed down a bit, though he still looked like he wanted to throw both me and Kuba out the window. Mr. Zbigniew sat with a sulky expression, like someone had just taken away his Flat Earth Association membership card. I looked at Kuba. He was calm, almost smug, as if the whole thing amused him. And that's when it hit me. If I didn't do something, he'd get branded as the boy who always gets away with it. But if I went too far, I'd break his spirit. I needed a balance. So, in my best, strict mom voice, I declared, "Kuba, you're grounded from the computer for 3 months. No games, no YouTube. And you're not allowed to go out with friends for a week. Now you will apologize to Mr. Zbigniew and to the principal." Kuba looked at me like I'd just announced I was selling him on the black market in Egypt. But he saw I wasn't joking. He stood up and muttered, without emotion, "I'm sorry." It wasn't very convincing. More like, "Sorry you exist." But it was enough for the principal to treat the matter as settled. I took Kuba and left. The whole drive home, we didn't say a word. He stared out the window. I stared at the road. Inside me, two emotions fought. Frustration and pride. Frustration, because now I had to play the strict mom role in front of the school. Pride, because damn, my kid had the guts to say what no one else dared. At home, we sat at the table. Before he could speak, I raised my hand. "Listen, I had to punish you in front of the principal. That's just how it had to be." But I paused, looking him straight in the eyes. "But I'm proud of you. Because you were right. Because you said out loud what every sane person thinks. But you have to understand. You can't say it like that. Do you get it?" Kuba shrugged. "But mom, he talks such nonsense. He's a teacher. He's teaching us lies." And that hit me, because he was right. Rules, respect, authority. But what if the so-called authority was spreading garbage? Then what? I get it. It makes me angry too. But you have to learn to choose your words. Otherwise, you will look like the fool, not him. "Fine," he muttered. "But I don't regret it." And in that moment, I knew my life wasn't going to be peaceful anytime soon. Because if Kuba didn't regret it, then neither would Mr. Zbigniew. And people like him don't forgive. It didn't even take a month before I noticed the pattern. Kuba came home more and more frustrated, more tired, less willing to talk about geography class. "Another F?" I asked when he dropped yet another test in front of me with a big red mark. "Mom, he gave me questions from a chapter we haven't even covered yet. Nobody else got them. Just me. Everyone else had easy stuff about Africa. I got geology of Asia. How was I supposed to know that?" At first I thought maybe he's exaggerating, maybe he forgot to study, maybe he's making excuses. But then it happened again and again. Harder questions, unfair grades, random oral quizzes, always aimed at him, and then the mocking started. Maybe the expert on the round earth will answer this one? Kuba probably knows better than NASA, right? The class laughed louder and louder while Kuba just sat there, boiling inside. One day he came home, threw his backpack in the corner, and said, "He's destroying me, Mom. He wants to make me look like an idiot. It's not about grades anymore. It's about crushing me." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a student-teacher disagreement. disagreement. This was an adult waging a personal vendetta against a 14-year-old. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Kuba came home and said right at the door, "Mom, guess where we're going for a class trip?" "Where?" "A museum, hiking trip, to the Flat Earth Society." I thought he was joking. I even laughed until I saw his serious face. "Excuse me, what?" "Yeah, Mr. Zbigniew organized a trip to a Flat Earther Association. He said we're going there especially for me so I can open my eyes." I froze. He had actually gone that far. Imagine this. The whole class goes by bus to some rented hall where a bunch of people show posters, drawings, and YouTube clips about how Antarctica is a giant ice wall, NASA is a mafia, and satellites are holograms. Kuba told me that as soon as they entered, one of the guys handed him a leaflet and said, "Young man, maybe you'll be the one who finally sees the truth." And then Mr. Zbigniew added, "See, Kuba, the whole world is wrong, but you think you're right." The rest of the class laughed their heads off because for them it was free entertainment, and Kuba sat there with clenched fists in his pockets. When he told me this later, I had to stop myself from grabbing the car keys and storming straight to that so-called society, but I held back. I knew it wasn't the right time yet to swing my sword. But from that day on, I made a decision. I couldn't leave it anymore. This wasn't just about grades, this was psychological abuse, and if I didn't act, it would only get worse. The next day, I scheduled a meeting with the principal. I walked into his office, determined, put my hands on the desk and said, "Sir, what's happening to my son is unacceptable. Mr. Zbigniew is using his position to bully him. He takes the class on trips, mocks him in lessons, gives him unfair grades. I will not tolerate this." The principal looked at me with a stony face. He sighed like I was a hysterical mom making a scene. "Ma'am," he began in that patronizing tone, "I've known Mr. Zbigniew for years. He's a very good teacher. Your son provokes him. If he would just sit quietly and listen, there would be no problem. You know, in school, you must respect the teacher, even if you don't agree with his views." I nearly laughed in his face. Respect? For someone teaching children lies? For making my son the class clown? The principal shrugged. "I can't interfere in a teacher's methods. Please calm down." It was like a bucket of ice water. That's when I understood. I couldn't count on the school. The principal would rather pretend nothing was happening than admit he employed a man spreading pseudoscientific nonsense. I walked out feeling defeated, but also with one clear resolution. If they wouldn't stop him, I would. That evening, after Kuba went to bed, I sat down with my laptop. I started searching. I typed Mr. Zbigniew's name into Google, adding words like school, dismissal, problems, and I found it. An article from a few years back. A local news site. Geography teacher dismissed from another school for spreading conspiracy theories and lashing out at students. So it wasn't just Kuba. He had been doing this for years. I knew we couldn't be the only ones. Somewhere out there had to be other parents whose kids went through the same nightmare, and I had to find them. I created a fake Facebook account so he couldn't trace it back to me. In one of the local groups, I posted, "Has anyone's child had problems with Mr. Zbigniew, the geography teacher? I mean, humiliation, weird ideas, bad treatment. I need to contact parents who had similar experiences." At first, silence. No reactions. But the next day, the first comment. "Oh my god, yes, my son had a nightmare with him. I wrote to the principal already, but nothing was done." Then another private message, and another. Within a week, I had several stories that sounded exactly like what Kuba was going through. One mom wrote, "My daughter got an F because she said she'd seen photos of Earth from space. He told her to stop joking." Another dad, "My son came home in tears because the teacher made him sit in the corner of the classroom as the one who believes in the ball. It was public humiliation." Reading all this, I felt my fury grow, but also determination. Now I had people willing to speak up. Together we could act. And then something happened that I didn't expect at all. Apparently, Mr. Zbigniew sensed a storm was coming because suddenly he reached out himself. Through a friend from the Parents' Council, he sent me a settlement offer, 20,000 zloty, for my silence. "So the matter won't blow up," the message said. "It's just your interpretation. Everyone will lose from this, but I'm willing to pay if you back off." I was speechless for a second. 20,000 is a lot of money. But then anger hit me so hard my hands shook. He thought this was about money, that he could buy my son's dignity? I refused immediately because by then I knew this wasn't just about Kuba's grades anymore. This was about making sure that man would never harm children again. Within the next few weeks, I gathered a group of 5 families. Each of them had their own story. Children mocked, publicly humiliated, unfairly graded, all because they refused to clap when Mr. Zbigniew talked about the ice wall or NASA's great conspiracy. We met in the evenings in my living room. I remember us sitting there with coffee and binders full of documents. Everyone brought their own evidence. Copies of tests, recorded fragments of lessons, even screenshots from Facebook where Mr. Zbigniew was sharing flat earth memes. "We have to do this officially," said the father of one girl. "A class action lawsuit. Then the court won't be able to ignore it." And that's what we did. With the help of a lawyer, we prepared a class action lawsuit against the teacher, demanding a ban on him working in schools. I won't lie, I was scared. This was a big deal. A small town where everyone knows everyone, and I knew sooner or later the principal would get dragged into it too. And I was right. When the case reached court, not only our stories came out, but also Zbigniew's past. Exactly what I had found in that article. His previous dismissal, complaints from other parents, his activity in conspiracy groups online. The atmosphere got so heavy that even the principal cracked. During the hearing, he tried to defend the teacher, saying it was just another point of view, but that only made things worse. He himself was implicated in the whole affair. After months of battle, the court delivered the verdict. Mr. Zbigniew loses the right to work as a teacher in educational institutions. The principal is dismissed from his position for failing to respond to clear violations of educational standards. I remember the day it was announced. I was sitting next to Kuba in the courthouse hallway. He looked at me, and in his eyes, for the first time in months, I saw relief. "Mom, we did it," he whispered. And only then did I feel that all the struggle, the nerves, the sleepless nights were worth it. After the verdict was announced, Kuba and I drove home in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because we both needed peace. I was drained, and so was he. The fight had dragged on for months, but finally, it was over. The first days after the scandal were strange. The school buzzed with gossip. Some said we had gone too far. Others said someone had finally had the courage to take a stand. But you know what? For the first time in a long while, Kuba went to school without without that weight on his shoulders. No more mocking, no more being made the class clown, no more unfair punishments, and most importantly, for the first time in months, I saw his smile come back. What surprised me the most was the reaction of other teachers. Many of them came up to me in the hallway and whispered, "Thank you for doing this. We had problems with him too, but we were afraid to speak up." And that confirmed it. This man should never have been teaching. For Kuba, the whole ordeal was also a lesson. He didn't stop being stubborn. He didn't stop standing up for his beliefs. But he learned one important thing: how you say something matters. Now, when he argues, and he still does, and probably always will, he knows how to bite his tongue before saying something he'll regret. And yet, it was clear he was proud, and that he felt like a winner.